The Curse of the Tiny Man, the unfolding saga of Kevin Crawford. Tiny man, tiny talent, my wife hissed at the dinner party, her fingers demonstratively pinched together as her colleagues erupted in laughter. I simply smiled, serving dessert, a silent scream echoing within my soul. 1 week later, I unearthed her blatant messages to a colleague, and then at long last I saw her face as I laid her overflowing bags by the door. Priceless. "You'll never find anyone better," she shrieked, her voice a piercing, desperate cry. Now she watches from across the very same restaurant, a ghost in her own narrative, as my new girlfriend's hands refuse to leave me. My name is Kevin Crawford. I am 30 years old, and a mere 6 months ago, I believe my marriage was, by all accounts, quite decent. Irene and I had been entwined for 9 years. We possessed a charming colonial-style abode nestled in a quiet Boston suburb, and our careers, it seemed, were blossoming with promise. But everything shattered on one fateful October evening. Irene, with an insistence that bordered on command, demanded we host a reception for her marketing firm colleagues. "It's crucial, Kevin, these connections matter," she'd cajoled. I dedicated the entire day to preparation, cleaning every nook, acquiring bottles of expensive wine, meticulously crafting her favorite dishes. By evening's embrace, everything was flawless. The wedding china gleamed, candles flickered with a warm glow, and the mellow notes of jazz whispered softly. 5 couples arrived, each cloaked in designer attire, their smiles stretched thin, almost translucent. I played the role of the obliging host while Irene worked the room, parading our newly renovated kitchen like a prized exhibit. For a time, the masquerade held. But after dinner, as I served dessert, the conversation took a treacherous turn towards relationships. Irene, having already consumed 4 glasses of wine, turned to me, her smile chilling. "When I first met Kevin, I thought he'd be such an impressive catch. Confident, commanding, impressive in every way." She delivered a theatrical wink, lingering on those final venomous words. Her colleague, Mark, dared to ask, "And he isn't?" Irene raised a hand, thumb and forefinger pressed so tightly together that scarcely any space remained between them. Let's just say some things don't quite measure up. The room erupted in an awkward, strained laughter. I stood frozen, plates of dessert still in my grasp, my face burning with a shame so profound it felt like a physical wound. "It's like being married to a teenager," she continued. "Quick to start, even quicker to finish, if you catch my drift." Someone attempted to steer the conversation away, but Irene was not finished. "We all have our burdens," she declared. "Mine's just smaller than most." She raised her glass in a mocking toast, and the others reluctantly joined her. The atmosphere hung thick with an oppressive embarrassment. Somehow, miraculously, I endured that evening, smiling, clearing plates, refilling drinks. But internally, something fundamental was fracturing. When everyone had departed, Irene acted as if nothing had transpired. When I attempted to broach the subject, she merely rolled her eyes. "Oh, relax, Kevin, it was just a joke. You're far too sensitive." That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her words reverberated through my mind, a relentless echo. The public humiliation made it impossible to ignore. That dinner party became the very first domino to fall in a cascading chain of revelations about the woman I had married, a new lens on old wounds. The morning after the dinner party, I awoke before Irene. My sleep had been restless, fragmented by the night's relentless replays. I slipped quietly from the bed, brewed coffee, and settled onto the kitchen island, watching the sunlight tentatively filter through the blinds. As I sat there, my mind replayed not only the previous night, but all of our 9 years together. It was as if I was viewing our relationship through a new lens, one that sharply illuminated every slight, every dismissive remark, every public humiliation. In the nascent stages of our relationship, Irene's comments had been subtle, often cloaked as helpful advice. "Perhaps you should wear thicker-soled shoes when we meet my family," she'd suggested. "It'll help you appear more substantial." I dismissed it, believing her simply practical. Then came the criticisms in the bedroom. What began as gentle guidance swiftly morphed into something more acerbic. "Is that all?" she'd ask, her expression utterly detached. Or worse, she'd sigh and turn away. Don't worry, I'm used to disappointment. 3 years ago, I received a significant promotion at work. I rushed home, a bottle of champagne clutched in my hand, burning to celebrate with my wife. Instead of congratulations, Irene merely offered a fleeting glance from her laptop. That's nice. They probably didn't have many options this year. She then launched into a 40-minute monologue about her own career achievements, leaving the champagne to warm on the table unopened. Family gatherings were minefields. Irene would introduce me to relatives, a hand resting on my shoulder. This is my husband, Kevin. He's not quite what I envisioned when I dreamed of marriage, but we make it work, don't we, darling? All delivered with that perfect smile that convinced everyone she was merely playfully affectionate. When clothes shopping, she'd hold up smaller sizes. Maybe someday, right? Directly in front of sales assistants. If I tried on something I liked, she'd offer a slight frown. It's fine if that's what you want, but it doesn't really flatter your figure. Even my hobbies weren't safe. 2 years ago, I began taking guitar lessons, a lifelong aspiration. After the third lesson, I overheard Irene speaking to her sister on the phone. It's sweet. His fingers are too tiny to reach some chords, but he tries so hard. I abandoned playing within a month. The most constant sting was her habit of praising me in private, just enough to publicly demolish me. She might say I looked handsome as we prepared for an event, only to later regale everyone with how she'd had to help me choose my outfit because I dressed like a colorblind teenager. As I sat in the kitchen, these memories coalesced into one devastating realization. This was not love. This was a systematic campaign to diminish me, all while maintaining the facade of an ideal marriage. I retrieved my phone and scrolled through Irene's Instagram. There they were, photos from last night's dinner. Amazing evening with amazing friends and my amazing husband who pulled it all together. The comments were flooded with hearts and adulations for couple goals. The stark contrast between her online depiction of our marriage and the crushing reality made me physically ill. I had been living two different relationships, the public one she curated for social media and the private one, where I was constantly reminded I was not enough. As the morning light filled our kitchen, the truth dawned on me with terrifying clarity. This was emotional abuse, and it had been going on for years. The naked truth, betrayal, exposed under the sun. 3 days after the dinner party, I was still reeling from the devastating revelations about our marriage when an opportunity presented itself. Irene had departed for her Saturday morning yoga class, a 90-minute session followed by what she termed essential networking at a nearby juice bar. In translation, at least 3 hours of unfettered freedom. I was not proud of what I was about to do, but something deep within me screamed for more truths to be unearthed. For years, I had held an unwavering respect for her privacy, never checking her phone, never questioning her late client meetings. Trust had been my religion, even when I was the sole true believer. I poured myself more coffee and stared at her iPad, lying innocent on the kitchen table. She had left it charging, likely assuming I would be occupied with chores, as was my usual Saturday morning routine. Her personal email, I reasoned, would most likely still be open. With trembling hands, I picked up the device. The screen glowed to life, displaying her inbox. My chest tightened as I scrolled through message after message from a JM, with subject lines like "missing you" and "Tuesday confirmed." I clicked on the most recent, dated just yesterday. Can't wait for Tuesday. Harborview Hotel, same room from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. I've already cooked up an excuse for my team. Tell Kevin you're having dinner with a client. Missing your touch, Jay. The room spun around me. I opened another message, this time with attached photographs revealing Irene and a man I recognized. James Maxwell, the creative director at her firm. The pictures weren't explicit, but the intimacy was unmistakable. His hand resting on her waist, her looking up at him with an adoration I hadn't seen directed at me in years. I checked the timestamp of the first email, 7 months ago. This was no one-time mistake, no recent lapse. This was a calculated, ongoing affair, unfolding right under my nose. With a mechanical precision, I took screenshots of the key messages, emailing them to my own secure account. Then I checked her calendar. Tuesday afternoon was marked client presentation prep, the lie already in place. Next, I scrutinized credit card statements online, charges for restaurants I had never visited on days we were supposedly spending together, a professional conference weekend that suspiciously coincided with a hotel charge in a coastal town 2 hours away. The evidence accumulated with each click, each search. The affair had been ongoing for over half a year with her colleague, the very same man who sat at our dinner table, witnessing my humiliation while sleeping with my wife. What hurt most deeply was not merely the betrayal, it was the crushing realization that while she openly mocked me before others, she was actively seeking gratification elsewhere, rather than addressing any issues in our marriage. I wasn't even worth the effort of a conversation. My hand ceased its trembling. The initial shock gave way to something colder, more focused. I took a deep breath and continued to gather evidence, creating a folder in my email titled Next Steps. By the time I heard Irene's key turn in the lock, I was calmly seated at the kitchen table, the iPad back in its original spot, my face a meticulously crafted mask of normalcy. "You're still home?" she asked, surprised to find me there. "Just finishing up some work," I replied, watching her with new eyes. "How was yoga?" "Great," she said, avoiding my gaze as she sat down. "Very centering." I nodded, wondering if she'd been with him instead of yoga, wondering how many more lies I had swallowed over the years. "I think I'll grill tonight," I said casually. "That salmon you like." She smiled, relieved I wasn't asking questions. "Sounds perfect." In a way, it was the perfect beginning to the end, the escape plan. From subservience to liberation. For the next 2 days, I lived a dual existence. On the surface, I was the same accommodating husband Irene was accustomed to, controlled. I made breakfast, inquired about her day, watched her shows without complaint. Meanwhile, beneath this calculated normalcy, I orchestrated my departure with military precision. On Monday morning, while Irene was in the shower, I called my old friend Mark. "I need somewhere to crash," I explained quietly. "Just a couple of weeks until I sort things out." "Is everything okay?" he asked, genuine concern lacing his voice. "Not really, I'll explain when I see you." "Your room's yours, buddy, no questions asked." Next was the lawyer, a woman a colleague had used during his divorce the previous year. I scheduled an appointment for Wednesday morning, requesting the earliest slot available. During my lunch break, I opened a new bank account at a different institution than where Irene and I held our joint savings. I transferred half of our savings, an amount that felt fair, given our equal contributions to the household. I wasn't aiming to financially punish her. I simply needed to protect myself. That evening, I cataloged what was truly mine: clothes, personal effects, a few family heirlooms, my grandfather's watch. Everything else, the furniture, the artwork we'd collected, the house itself, could be sorted out during the divorce proceedings. Material possessions suddenly seemed insignificant compared to reclaiming my self-respect. Tuesday was the most challenging part, maintaining normalcy, knowing what was unfolding. Irene left for work in an outfit I'd never seen, her hair and makeup more meticulously done than usual for a standard office day. "Big client presentation," she explained, a hurried kiss on my cheek. "Don't wait up for me. We'll probably grab dinner afterward to celebrate." "Good luck," I said, the words burning on my tongue. While she was gone, I packed 2 suitcases with essentials and loaded them into the trunk of my car during my lunch break, parking it down the street so she wouldn't notice if she happened to come home. At work, I requested personal days for Thursday and Friday. My boss, noting my impeccable record, approved without question. That night, Irene returned home after 9 p.m., slightly disheveled and smelling of an unfamiliar cologne. She claimed the presentation had gone well, detailing fictitious client reactions with painstaking precision. I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the supportive husband for the very last time. While she showered, I checked her location history on our shared account, the Harborview Hotel. Exactly as stated in the email, the final confirmation of what I already knew. "You seem quiet," she said later as we prepared for bed. "Just tired. Big deadline tomorrow." She nodded, already scrolling through her phone. Don't forget we have dinner with the Johnsons on Saturday. Won't forget, I lied, knowing by then I would be long gone. As she drifted to sleep beside me, I lay awake, studying her face in the dim light. This woman, who had once been the center of my world, now seemed a stranger, beautiful still, but hollow where her heart should have been. I felt an unexpected pang of pity. Whatever she was seeking, she hadn't found it with James, or she wouldn't have needed the validation of controlling me. Tomorrow I would take back my life. Tonight I silently bid farewell to the man I had been, the one who allowed himself to be diminished for the sake of a marriage that existed only in his imagination, the Last Supper laying bare. The truth. Wednesday evening arrived with a palpable sense of finality. My meeting with the lawyer had gone well. She had outlined a straightforward path forward, given the evidence of infidelity. My personal belongings were already at Mark's apartment. All that remained was the inevitable confrontation. I prepared Irene's favorite meal, salmon with roasted vegetables and that expensive Chardonnay she adored. By the time she arrived home, the table was set with candles and flowers, a scene of domestic perfection soon to be shattered. "What's the occasion?" she asked, tossing her keys into the bowl by the door. "Just felt like doing something nice," I replied, pulling out her chair. We ate in relative silence. Her occasional comments about work were met with my non-committal replies. Finally, when I could delay no longer, I placed the folder on the table between us. "We need to talk, Irene." Her expression shifted from surprise to weariness. "About what?" "I know about James." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please," I interjected, opening the folder. "Let's not add more lies." I laid out the evidence, one by one, the emails, the hotel receipts, the restaurant bills, the location history. With each item, her expression cycled through shock, denial, calculation, before settling on indignation. "You went through my private emails." Her voice rose. "That's a complete invasion of privacy." "Yes," I calmly acknowledged. "After years of your emotional abuse and public humiliation, I finally trusted my instincts." "Abuse?" she scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic, Kevin. Calling me tiny and inadequate in front of your colleagues isn't abuse. Mocking my career while you sleep with your coworker isn't emotional cruelty." Her strategy shifted instantly. Tears welled in her eyes, the same performance I'd seen her use on clients about to walk away. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "It meant nothing. We can fix this." "The affair is only one of the reasons this marriage is over," I explained, maintaining my composure. "Even without it, I wouldn't stay with someone who holds me in such contempt." She reached across the table for my hand. I pulled it away. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "I've been under so much pressure at work. James was just there." 7 months, I said quietly. "That's not a mistake, Irene. That was a choice you made every single day." Her tears vanished instantly, replaced by a cold fury. "Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I was unhappy. What did you expect? You never satisfied me. Not financially, not emotionally, not physically." I nodded, almost relieved to finally hear her unvarnished thoughts. "Which is precisely why I'm leaving. I deserve better than someone who sees me that way." "Leaving?" she scoffed, a dismissive wave of her hand. "Better than me. Good luck finding anyone who'll put up with your limitations." In that moment, looking at her beautiful face contorted by cruelty, I felt a strange sense of peace. This woman had never loved me. She had only loved controlling me. "The divorce papers will be ready tomorrow," I said, standing up. "I won't be back." "You can't just leave," Irene said, following me to the door. Her voice wavered between anger and panic. "We need to talk about this." "We just did," I replied, picking up the small overnight bag I'd left by the entrance that morning. "You made your feelings very clear." "Where are you even going?" she demanded, crossing her arms defensively. "That's no longer your concern." As I walked towards my car, she followed me onto the porch, her controlled facade crumbling with every step. "This is insane, Kevin. You're throwing away 9 years for one mistake." I turned to face her, keys in hand. It wasn't one mistake. It was years of humiliation followed by months of betrayal. "I'll go to therapy," she cried, desperation creeping into her voice. "I'll break it off with James. I'll do anything you want." For a fleeting moment, I hesitated. 9 years was a long time to simply walk away. But then my phone chimed with a message from James sent to both of us. "Everything okay? You're not returning my calls." Irene's face contorted with rage as she realized I had his number. Her scream echoed through our quiet suburban street as I got into my car. "You'll regret this. You think anyone else will want you? You're nothing without me." I started the engine, surprisingly calm despite her fury. "Goodbye, Irene." Mark was waiting on his porch when I pulled into his apartment complex 15 minutes later. He assessed my face with one glance and silently helped me carry my bags inside. "Want to talk about it?" he asked, handing me a beer once we were settled in his living room. "Not yet," I replied, finally feeling the adrenaline of the confrontation subside. "Maybe tomorrow, whenever you're ready, buddy." That night, my phone exploded with notifications. Irene, with alarming speed, shifted tactics. 7:42 p.m. "I'm sorry, please come home, we can fix this." 8:15 p.m. "You're acting like a child. This silence is beneath you." 9:03 p.m. "I've called your friends. No one's seen you. Are you safe?" 10:27 p.m. "I'm calling the police if you don't respond." 11:14. "James meant nothing. You're my husband. Please." Midnight. "This is what you always do. Run away instead of fighting for us." I switched off my phone, marveling at how she could rewrite our entire history in a mere few hours, casting herself as the victim and me as the villain. The following morning, I met with my lawyer again, finalizing the divorce paperwork. By noon, the papers were prepared. I opted to send them via courier rather than serving them in person. I had no desire to witness another of Irene's performances. In the afternoon, I visited a therapist my lawyer had recommended for individuals navigating emotionally abusive relationships. Dr. Michaels listened intently as I recounted the dinner party, the pattern of humiliation, the affair. "What you're describing is indeed emotional abuse," she affirmed. "And your response, removing yourself from the situation, was actually quite healthy." "Then why do I feel so guilty?" I asked. "Because abusers are excellent at making their victims feel responsible for the consequences of the abuser's actions," she explained. "It will take time to unlearn that." I scheduled another session for the following week, feeling a small weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was prioritizing my own well-being. Back at Mark's apartment, I finally turned my phone back on, discovering 37 missed calls and a barrage of increasingly desperate messages. The last one, sent only an hour ago, simply read, "I got the papers. This isn't over, Kevin." But for me, it was. With every passing hour in my new Irene-free life, I grew more certain that this was definitively the end. Phoenix rising. A new life, a new Kevin. The week following my departure unfolded like a psychological thriller. Irene's tactics evolved from desperate pleas to calculated attacks with frightening rapidity. Day 1. She appeared at my office, tearfully informing my colleagues that she was worried about my mental health. She was eventually escorted out by security. Day 2. She contacted my parents, concocting a story about how I had abandoned her without warning after one tiny argument. My mother called, concerned, until I explained the truth, including the affair. Her response, "I never liked that woman," made me laugh for the first time in days. Day 3. Flowers arrived at Mark's apartment with a card that read, "I miss us. Please come home." The fact that she had tracked down my location was more unsettling than romantic. Day 4. She enlisted the help of her sister to reason with me. Jenny appeared at my office demanding that I give Irene another chance. When I presented her with the evidence of the affair, her righteous indignation deflated. "I had no idea," Jenny confessed. "She told me you were having a midlife crisis." "I'm 38, I remarked. "She always had a way of twisting things," Jenny said quietly. "Regardless, I'm sorry." Day 5. The gloves were off. Irene drained our joint checking account, a move my lawyer had anticipated. Thankfully, I had already redirected my direct deposits to my new account. Nevertheless, it signaled an escalation I hadn't expected. That evening, she sent pictures of us from happier times with the subject line, "Is this really what you want to throw away?" The answer was increasingly leaning towards yes. Day 6. I returned to our house, accompanied by the police, to retrieve more personal belongings. Irene was waiting, impeccably made up, eyes red-rimmed from what appeared to be strategic crying. "You brought the police?" she hissed as I entered. "Just a precaution," I replied, walking past her into the bedroom. She followed me, watching as I gathered family photos, important documents, and sentimental items. "What about our plans?" she asked, her voice softening. "The Italy trip? The family we talked about?" "Those were dreams you never intended to fulfill," I said, zipping up my suitcase. "You can't betray someone for months and expect them to believe your promises for the future." Her expression hardened. "The house is still half yours," she said. "You're responsible for the mortgage." "Sell it," I suggested. "The lawyer will handle the division." "I can't afford it alone," she admitted, a rare moment of vulnerability. That's no longer my problem. 1 month after leaving Irene, the divorce proceedings progressed with surprising efficiency. Her initial attempts to delay and complicate matters fizzled when her lawyer, seeing the evidence of infidelity, advised her to settle quickly. I found a small, modern apartment downtown, closer to my office. The rent was reasonable, and more importantly, it was mine alone, a space untainted by Irene's criticisms or control. On my first weekend of true freedom, I stood in the empty living room surrounded by boxes and felt something unexpected, possibility. No one would mock my design choices or criticize the furniture arrangement. The bare walls could hold anything I desired. I started small, buying a comfortable sofa that Irene would have loathed for its too masculine appearance. I hung my grandfather's fishing prints, which he had banished to the garage. I set up a corner for the guitar I'd abandoned years ago. At work, I threw myself into a major project I had hesitated to lead when I was with Irene. Without her voice in my head telling me I wasn't capable enough, I excelled. My team responded to my newfound confidence, and 3 weeks later, my boss pulled me aside. "Whatever's changed in your life, it's working for you," he said. "I'm recommending you for the senior manager position opening next month." Therapy was helping too. Dr. Michaels guided me through recognizing patterns of abuse, normalizing them, teaching me to value my own perceptions again. The most common question I hear from people leaving emotional abusers is, "Why did I stay so long?" she told me. The answer is that abuse rarely starts dramatically. It builds gradually, like a frog in slowly heating water. My friendship with Mark deepened over those weeks. One evening over beers, he confessed something. "I never liked Irene," he admitted. "The way she talked to you, it was wrong. But you seemed happy, so I kept quiet." I wasn't happy, I realized aloud. I was just committed to the idea that I should be. Irene continued her campaign of manipulation, though her tactics grew increasingly desperate. She sent mutual friends to check on me, alternated between threats and love bombing, and once left a handwritten letter detailing how I had misunderstood her actions. Nothing worked. Every day of freedom fortified my resolve. Every small decision made for myself rebuilt my confidence. The divorce would take months, but I had already achieved something more important: independence. The man who silently served dessert while being humiliated was gone, replaced by one who understood his own worth. One evening, as I set up my new record player, another acquisition Irene would have scorned, I realized I was smiling for no particular reason. It wasn't quite happiness, not yet, but it was something equally precious: peace. The triumph of freedom. A new chapter. 3 months after leaving Irene, I received my promotion at work. The senior manager position came with a significant pay raise, increased responsibilities, and a new confidence I was still getting used to. My colleagues noted the change, commenting on my more assertive presentations and innovative approaches to projects. "Whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it," my director said after I successfully landed a major client we had pursued for years. What I was doing differently was simple, existing without constant criticism. Dating wasn't initially on my radar, but when Lisa from the marketing department suggested coffee after a project meeting, I surprised myself by agreeing. Our coffee date blossomed into dinner, then weekend hikes, then more. She was intelligent, straightforward, and genuinely kind. Most importantly, she listened when I spoke and valued my opinions, something that still felt profoundly new. The first time we were intimate, I braced myself for disappointment or comparison. Instead, she was present, communicative, and afterward she held me close and whispered, "That was perfect." 3 simple words that healed wounds I didn't realize were still open. 5 months into my new life, the day I had secretly dreaded arrived. My friend Jack was celebrating his promotion at Costello's, an upscale restaurant popular with the professional crowd. I knew there was a high probability of seeing Irene there. I arrived with Lisa feeling assured in my custom-tailored suit and the life I had rebuilt. An hour into the evening, as we laughed with Jack's guests, I felt a familiar presence. Irene stood across the room watching us. She looked thinner, her outfit more meticulously chosen than usual, as if she were trying to project an image of perfection. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment. I offered a polite nod and returned to my conversation, not missing a beat. Later, as Lisa and I danced, Irene approached, a glass of wine in her hand. "You look well," she said, her voice tight. "Thanks. You too," I replied simply. An awkward silence stretched between us, laden with unspoken history. "I heard about your promotion," she finally offered. "Congratulations." "Thank you." She glanced at Lisa, who had stepped away for drinks. "She seems nice." "She is," I affirmed. "Very." Irene seemed to be waiting for something, questions about her life, perhaps, or some hint that I missed her. I offered nothing. "Well," she finally said, "I should get back to my table." As she walked away, I realized something profound. I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, no regret, only a quiet indifference. Exactly 1 year after that fateful dinner party, my divorce from Irene was finalized. The legal process was surprisingly straightforward. Once her manipulative attempts failed, we sold the house, divided assets, and went our separate ways, without the dramatic court battle she had threatened. Lisa and I had been dating for 8 months, our relationship evolving naturally, built on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. When I told her the full story of my marriage, she listened without judgment, and then said something I would never forget. "Thank you for trusting me with your past. Now let's focus on our future." With my new salary and my portion of the house sale, I purchased a modern apartment overlooking the city park. Lisa helped me furnish it, never imposing her preferences but encouraging my choices. "This is your space," she insisted. "It should reflect you." My guitar playing steadily improved. I even joined an amateur band on weekends with some colleagues. The first time Lisa came to watch us play at a local pub, her genuine pride in my modest skills washed away years of Irene's dismissive comments. At work, I led my team to its most successful quarter in history. My boss mentioned future director opportunities I now confidently pursued. My weekly therapy sessions evolved into monthly check-ins, then graduation. "You've done the work," Dr. Michaels told me. "You now recognize the red flags. Trust yourself." On the anniversary of my departure, Lisa suggested we celebrate what she called my Freedom Day. We reserved a table at Azucci's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. By an eerie coincidence, or perhaps a cruel twist of fate, Irene was there. She stood amidst a cluster of colleagues, her laughter echoing, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding. Across the crowded restaurant, our eyes locked. In that suspended moment, a profound sense of closure washed over me. Nothing more, nothing less. It was Irene who broke the gaze first, turning to the man beside her with a laugh that, even from a distance, seemed brittle, forced. Lisa's hand found mine, her grip firm, a silent question in her touch. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "Perfectly," I replied, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I meant it with every fiber of my being. The full measure of healing. Later, as we savored a shared dessert, the true depth of my healing became undeniably clear. I no longer defined myself by Irene's shadow, nor by her perception of me. The angry, wounded man who had fled our home had been forged anew, emerging stronger, wiser, and profoundly content. "What's on your mind?" Lisa asked, her voice soft. Noticing my contemplative silence, I simply smiled, raising my glass in a silent toast to the woman who saw me for who I truly was and cherished what she saw. "Just grateful for second chances," I murmured. The tiny man Irene had once mocked had finally found his full stature, not in inches or outward appearance, but in the quiet dignity of a life genuinely lived. Ladies and gentlemen, since you've listened to the end of this story, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments which state you're watching from. Let's see what percentage of elite viewers make it to the end. And please kindly turn your attention to the screen after this message. There you'll find a full playlist of thrilling stories, a subscribe button for the channel, and our most captivating story. Click, enjoy, and thank you.